Hello, my name is Jerry Cherry, and I just created a music reference guide for releasing your music and collecting royalties that are owed to you. And, well, first of all, I want to say I hope you're doing well and staying safe with this coronavirus and keeping yourself busy. We will get through this. The way I've been keeping busy is making this reference guide, and it took me a long time to put this information together. So hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully it's something that will help you. So, as you may know, I released my second record, Married to Myself, 3 months ago, and there's a lot of things you have to do when you're putting a record out, whether it's before the record goes out or after the record goes out. There's a lot of services you need to really be established with in order to get the money that is due back to you, that is rightfully yours. Because everyone is just getting ripped off out there with their music, especially in this new world where everything is streamed. So I'm going to go through some of these things, and hopefully that we can get somewhere with this. All right, first thing is first. What are you putting out there? Digital distribution of a single, a CD, full album, thumb drives, records, all the above. Okay, well, the first thing I recommend you do is copyright your music with the Library of Congress. Go there to the website and you'll see there's a few forms there to fill out. PA, Performing Arts. That is basically registering that you've written the words and music and you're the author of the music. It's like $65 for a registration now, and you could basically put all the songs on one registration. You make a title of it, like in my case would be Married to Myself. Then you can list all the songs on one registration. Same thing with the SR form. It's a sound recording form. And that's copyrighting the actual sound recording of your songs. And you could do that on a registration as well. Now, I recommend that you do all this before your music goes out in the world, before you distribute it. Because once you distribute it, it's published music. And published in the sense of publishing it, getting it out into the world for sale, available, being seen or heard. If you copyright your stuff before then, it's cheaper. Like I said, it's $65 on registration. If you do it afterward, you may have to register each song individually because they're published, which could be very expensive, and you don't want to have to do that. So, once your song is actually copywritten, once you make it tangible. Like if I come up with an idea and I write it down on a piece of paper or a napkin, it's copywritten right there. Or if I record it into my phone, it's legal, it's copyrighted right there. But I recommend copywriting it with the Library of Congress, even though it's, you have to pay for it, but it gives you protection. It allows you to prove copyright infringement in the event somebody steals your recording without a license from you. You can then sue them and get a certain amount of money for that. It's called statutory damages. And you can get up to $150,000 for each willful infringement. If a composition is not registered with the U.S. Copyright Office, a music service like Spotify or Apple Music technically doesn't have to pay royalties for the composition's mechanical royalty, which that's another big reason why. But technically, they don't really pay attention to that. They don't pay you for other reasons. Let's put it that way. But there's a new law that was just passed last year called the MMA, the Music Modernization Act, and that changes that aspect, which we'll get into all of that later. You'll need a UPC, Universal Product Code. And you all know what that is. That's basically this thing right here, the little barcode that goes beep, beep. If you buy a CD, if you buy Licorice, or Campbell's Soup, you know, it basically knows what's being purchased at that point. So, you'll need that. Your digital distributor will need one so that they know what to reference your song to or your album to, and your project to, or your product, basically, it's a universal product code. Your digital distributor will give you one, and your CD manufacturer, like I went through Discmaker when I had this made. Great company, I recommend if you're making CDs or albums or whatever. Discmaker, located in New Jersey, it's the best out of all of them. So, they'll provide you, you have to pay for it. It's like $20, but they'll provide you with the UPC number. And when you submit your artwork, they'll pop it in there as well. But you'll also get one when you have your music distributed as well. I needed two of them because I was making my CD and I was distributing it at the same time. So I had to just get those numbers separately. So besides that, you'll need to make sure your CD is Red Book Standard. And basically, you provide your mastering engineer who's putting the songs together for you. You need to provide him with ISRC codes, which stands for International Standard Recording Code. And basically what that means is every song has a unique identifier, which digitally tracks all of your songs. So every song you have has its own ISRC. And like my song Miracle has one. My song Married to Myself has a separate one. This is how you get paid. It tracks that code throughout the world, and it knows where the money goes, or how to match the songs. So you need that. That's one part of Red Book Standard. As far as these ISRC codes, your distributor will give you one. Like if you put up a song, you want to put it up into the world, they'll give it to you. But like I was saying, I had my distribution sent out at the same time as manufacturing, so I wanted to buy in my own codes. It was like $95, but something I just wanted to get, and now I have a whole bunch of them that I can actually use for when I make more music. And because they're such important numbers, I really wanted to just kind of take care of that on my own, and I did. But there's another thing as far as the Red Book Standard, and that's, lead-in areas, start times for your songs. Like, you have an album, and you just want to make sure that when you hit play, it plays right away and it doesn't wait 5-10 seconds. Or in between the second song and the third song, you're having too much time. You want it to kind of like start and stop at proper times. That's the lead-in areas and start times. So that's Red Book Standard. Also, at the same time you're getting ready to put your music out in the world, it's a good time to set up and sign in with Nielsen Soundscan. It's very easy. And I'll put the links to all these things below in the description so that you could easily access all that stuff. Nielsen Soundscan. It's basically the sales source for Billboard music charts database to track album sales to see how many albums were sold in the week. Have big dreams. You're going to be on the Billboard's Top 40. And the only way to really do that is to be set up with this, because they track all your sales, and it's based on sales, song sales. So the sooner that they could track that your song is selling, the more tracks it will get, and the higher it will get, and the potential of getting on Billboard. And the reason why I'm mentioning this now is because the sooner you send that into them, because once your song is out there in the world and you get a big buzz right off the top with it, that's when most of your sales, or a lot of your sales, are going to be. So you might as well have them register, into SoundScan so that they pick up on all that. Because you might sell a bunch of songs at first, and then you have a lull, and you don't want to wait till there's a lull. You want to wait till you want to start at the top with that. So get set up with SoundScan. It's free, and you should do it. Okay, an SRCO, Sound Recording Copyright Owner. It's just what it sounds like. It's whoever owns the rights to the sound recording. Like if you go into a studio and record your song, like I recorded my album in my own studio, so it's obvious that I am the sound recording owner. If you go into a studio, make sure you get a receipt saying that you're paying for their services for them to record your song for you, your sound recording for you. Otherwise, they technically are the recording owners of that song. And when we're dealing with royalties and money and payments, you know, the song rights is a big part of that. And you just want to make sure that money comes back to you because it is your song, and not the studios. Because they could claim that it's theirs because they made it and they created it. So be aware of that. Now, we got all that stuff out of the way. Now it's time to get your music out into the world. We have a little sip of water first from my D'Addario strings glass. You'll need a digital distributor, aka Aggregator. You've heard of companies like CD Baby, TuneCore, DistroKid. DistroKid, I highly recommend. They're the best out of all of them. They're the ones that I used to get my stuff out there and married to myself. 12 years ago when I did Life is Sweeter, I used CD Baby, and I almost used them again, but I learned about DistroKid. I'm very glad that I did the research and went with them. So basically, these are the companies that get your music into the world, into all the DSPs, the digital sound providers, and digital service providers. Sorry, and you need to go through a distributor to get your stuff out there. The distributors in the old days used to distribute your records to the record stores. Now they distribute your songs digitally. Spotify, Apple Music. Some of the good things about DistroKid is that you keep 100% of your royalties, whereas CD Baby, TuneCore, they'll take out like 9% or something of it, which could be a lot of money, 9%. Like, for instance, like if you sell a song on iTunes for 99 cents and they keep their 30 cents of it, that's 69 cents left. That should go to you and not, 10%, not 7 cents or 6.9 cents to them. For what? I mean, what are they doing? Basically nothing at that point. So, DistroKid, for letting you keep all your royalties is a major plus, especially for independent artists, people like us that need every penny we can get. A penny's not a lot, but it's my penny, and I want it. And another good thing that they do, DistroKid, is they have writer band payment splits. Like if you write a song with your bandmates, say there's 5 of them, you could divide it percentage-wise, 20% to each. So they'll pay. You can just put it in, like in DistroKid when you're in your online with them. You can actually designate 20%, 20% this person, 20 to that person, etc. And if they're set up, they don't have to have an account, but if they just set up, money will just go directly to them. So other companies don't do that, and it's up to you, if you're a co-writer, to get that money to them. But this is a great feature that DistroKid has. They're a very forward-thinking company, DistroKid, and I really think they have the artist's best interest in mind. If you're going to release something and you want to go DistroKid, I'll have a link for them below. And if you use that link, you'll actually save like 7% or something, 10% of a very cheap setup fee. You pay once a year. It's like $20 for a year, and you can put out as much music as you want. Whereas someone like CD Baby will charge more than that, but it's just a one-time fee, which is a good thing. But it's just for one release. With DistroKid, you pay, and you can release throughout as much as you want, to your heart's desire. So it's a very good feature. I highly recommend DistroKid. Okay, now you get your song out in the world, right? There's a few things that you should know as far as how it works and how you end up getting your money. Once your song is recorded, you're what they call an SPS, a self-published songwriter. Excuse me. And you're a songwriter because you wrote the song. You're a publisher because you own the copyright to that song. And you're also a publishing administrator because you have signing power. Your job is to collect licenses and revenue that your licenses and copyright makes when it gets used. So basically, you're in control. You're the songwriter, you're the publisher, you're the publishing administrator. Everything that all these companies claim that they do and that they do to help you. But at first, you got to realize, to understand this crazy web here, is that you are everything at this point. Okay? Now, we're going to get into the important things that you need to be established with. First thing is a PRO, a performing rights organization. You've heard of ASCAP, BMI, etc. PROs, performing rights organizations, are in North America. Less so outside the U.S. There's other ones outside the U.S. And they're responsible for collecting revenue on behalf of songwriters and music publishers when a song is publicly performed. They come into play when there's commerce involved. Like when your song is played in restaurants, bars, concert venues, streaming services, anything music in public. The PROs pay songwriters and publishers in the form of performance royalties. They always pay out the writer's share of your royalty directly to the songwriter, but they differ how they pay to the publisher's share. CMOs are international, collective management organizations, similar to PROs, but they work outside of North America. And you should know that you can only belong to one PRO as a songwriter, but multiple PROs as a publisher. So the way they work is collection societies. They take their slice of the pie and send you the rest. Like, for instance, if they make $1, they pay 50 cents to the songwriter, then 50 cents to the publisher, which is you. Okay, so all the money from all that stuff, from performance royalties, will go to you. So it's a very good setup. And you have to think, music business-wise, you can no longer think of a whole like you own the song. A song is looked at in the eyes of the business as it's split. You have the writer's share, and you have 50% writers, 50% publisher, which is yourself, yeah. But when you're dealing in the business, you have this publishing. That's why people say, hold on to your publishing. But that's where you work this publishing to get your money. Okay. So, affiliating and registering your songs. Now, with a company like ASCAP, which I'm signed up with ASCAP, is my PRO. When you do this with the Collection Society, you do this so that your songs could be tracked and earned royalties. When you affiliate yourself as a songwriter with the Collection Society, you'll receive an IPI number, Interested Parties Information Number. This number identifies you as a songwriter and connects you with your songs so that you get your royalties. So when you're at the ASCAP website and you're filling out all the paperwork, all the computer stuff, it's basically like anything else. You have to cross your T's, dot your I's, just be very thorough. Make sure your name is correct in there. Don't use your middle name unless you use your middle name all the time. There's things, because this is like metadata, and they use this to track stuff like all over the place. And the more everything is correct in the system, the easier it is for them to know who you are, know where the money should go to. Take my advice. I've learned the hard way on things where it's like, we want to pay you, but who are you? We don't recognize your name, or your name's spelled incorrectly, or the song is spelled incorrectly. So really be particular about everything you put in there. Like, list any of the performers of the song. You could list all the writers and the publishers with their correct shares. List any alternate titles. I mean, they have all this information, for you to provide, and they don't have it, but they have areas where you could provide this information. Updated writers, publishers, contact info, report live performances with your collection society, because they collect royalties on your live performances. Most of the time they don't know about it. So there's lots of ways you could be involved with your PRO so that you're on top of them so they could do their job. Most of the time they just, you're in with a million songwriters, and it's hard to separate you from the batch, so really be involved with them and know where your money's coming from. So, one thing that they'll need as well is they'll need your ISRC numbers as well, and you'll have them for them. But one thing that they'll create for you is an ISWC number, which is another number much like the ISRC, but instead of the standard recording code, it's the International Standard Work Code, and it's a song identifier unique to the composition, which allows it to be tracked for your royalties to be mapped to. So, like I said before, where there's a song that has the ISRC, which is a unique identifier, the ISWC is a unique identifier for the composition. Now, you could have just one composition. You could have lots of songs from that composition. Like, for instance, Yesterday by the Beatles. There's one ISWC because there's one composition, but there's like 3,000 ISRCs because there's 3,000 versions floating around in the world. It's like you can have a bunch of daddies, but only one father. I always wanted to use that analogy somewhere. Finally got to use it. All right. So now, remember at this point still, hold on. Take a little sip of some coffee. Oh, that's cold. That's good. It's only rock and roll, but I like it. All right. So, as we've established, make sure the recorder's still going. We're all good. You're the songwriter. You own the song. You own the publishing. You're the publishing administrator. You're everything at this point. Let's talk a little bit about publishing administrators, because some of these distribution companies, they have publishing administration available for you. And here's the one thing that I never did. I never signed up with their public administration because I never felt it was right. I never quite trusted it, I'm like old school like that, where I always felt like, don't give away your publishing in any capacity unless it's going to benefit you in some kind of way. And I know a publishing administration deal is a little bit different, but yet it is the same. What they do is, and first of all, you're your own publishing administrator right off the bat. So at this point, unless you sign that right to another pub admin, we'll call them, companies like Song Trust. Once you sign that right away, you no longer control the licenses of your lyric and melody copyright. So if you do a deal with Song Trust, you have just assigned them the exclusive rights to be the publishing administrator. They're going to license and collect the money for the 6 rights, or as we say, the 6 slices of copyright. Pub admins like Song Trust have relationships with performance and mechanical collection societies around the world that make royalty collection much simpler than a songwriter like you or I doing it on their own. Pub admins don't own any percentage or take any creative control of your copyright. Okay, sorry about that. Don't control any percentage or take any creative control of your copyright at any point during the term of agreement or after the point of agreement. They take around 15% fee. Here's the thing, though. You really don't need one in the U.S. and Canada. Where you need it is outside the U.S. and Canada. If you can do a pub admin deal with an organization who could mop up your money from the rest of the world, so be it. In the United States and Canada, you really should do it on your own because all you're doing is hiring someone to do the work for you for public performance and reproduction rights. If you have a significant presence overseas, like in Germany, like David Hasselhoff, I always wanted to use that one too. It may help to sign up with a pub admin. And one thing to point out too is a pub admin like Songtrust is that they charge a $100 setup fee per writer. So the publishing administrator, and I've done a lot of research on this, and I've seen people on YouTube talk about it, and you want to believe people, you want to believe me, but do your research on your own. Never trust what someone's saying, and I wasn't sure what this person was saying, so I did my homework, and I looked, and I was starting to realize that that particular person was right, that, publishing administrator, they want to take 15% of your royalties for doing that job, okay? And, okay, they're business, and they want to make money, and they want to make money for you. I understand that you have everything at this point, and there's a saying where 100% of nothing is nothing. We know that. So if you give them the rights, so they're going to go out and try to make money for you, but what you're doing is you're giving them the license to your publishing now. Now you have no control over it, okay? So you got to be careful who you give your rights to in any capacity. They're going to basically do in America what you could kind of do on your own with the services of maybe some other companies that I'll mention to you. Really where they're important, like they say here, is overseas where you really can't do this. Like you're your own publishing administrator, but it's hard for you to call up a place in Europe and go, hey, are you paying me for my royalties? Or you're going to call Budokan and go, hey, are you paying me for my royalties? Or Spain or China or Japan or wherever in the world. These companies, they have relationships, and so it would benefit you that way. But is your presence that big over there where it's worth it? That $100, or not even the $100, more of giving them the rights. Your publishing rights there. So I don't know. I never really signed up with one, and actually I'm glad that I didn't up to this point. I haven't yet with Married to Myself either. I'll tell you what I did do recently too, which is very similar. Okay, so another thing you have to do, now that you know about, you get your song out into the world, you're your own publisher, you're your own publishing administrator, you have to realize that besides the song being the writer and the publisher, it's also split a different way. An original song has 2 licenses, okay? So now you have to look at a song as 2. Like here's a song, here's two licenses. One of the licenses is a composition, which is lyric and melody, which is publishing, which is like what we just talked about. Your whole song is a writer, publishing. Now we're going to split that again. Now on this side, you have the composition, which is if you see, like on a record or an album or a CD or whatever, you'll see the little C. I'm doing it backwards too for you. A C with a little circle, that means composition copyright. On the other side, you have the phonogram master recording. You see the little P, and that stands for phonogram master recording. And so now your song is split the 2 ways, and that's how the music business identifies your song, and that's how you get paid based on these percentages. I mean, right now, say you write a song and you're everything, you recorded it, and you own the master recording. It's all you. But a lot of times in the business, it doesn't work that way. There could be a writer, there could be multiple publishers, there could be a sound recording owned by a record company, and there could be another artist singing your song. So they have to have it in all these different ways. It's simple to look at it. It's like it's just your song, which in my case, for most of it, it is. But you have to understand that you have to look at it this way to know how to get paid. Okay. So now, and on this point, the composition, lyric and melody, that's basically what the composition is. It's the lyric and it's the melody. and it's the publishing. Okay, you get performance royalties and you get mechanical royalties. On the recording end, you get performance royalties and you get master recording royalties. Like the master is the big one, where on if you get paid from your download, where say if you get sells for 99 cents, iTunes takes 30 cents, that's 69 cents goes to the master recording. So a lot of the money goes to that, so it's good. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about, you have to be aware of, or should have a good understanding of, is still at this point, you're everything. You own the song, you're the songwriter, you're the publisher, the publishing administrator. Your job, if you want your song to do anything in the world, because it's only you still, you haven't signed with the administrator who's doing this. An administrator's job would be to do these 6 things for you. Okay? We call it the 6 slices of copyright. And controlled by the publishing administrator, yourself, and sometimes outsourced to the PRO like ASCAP, but for just one of the 6 slices, and that's the performance, public performance. So number 1, right of public performance. That's the PRO's number 1 job, like ASCAP. An admin, like an administration company, a performance admin, do the same job if hired. What they do is collections from live venues, broadcasts, movie theaters outside the USA, elevators, grocery stores, noodle shops in Japan, all over the world, streams on YouTube, websites. Your PRO, you already have one if you signed up with ASCAP. I mean, that's the number 1 thing. It's the only thing you've done so far, really. It's this free thing, sign up with ASCAP. BMI might charge for certain aspects of it. So that's their main job, collections. For when you're sitting in a restaurant and you hear, "It's a miracle to be alive." If you hear your song, you should be getting paid through, ASCAP for that, or your PRO. So number 2 of the 6 slices of copyright, right of reproduction, aka mechanical royalties, and they're regulated by the U.S. government. Digital would be like download streams, physical would be vinyl, CDs, cassettes. Every time there's a reproduction of the lyric and melody of the entity doing that needs a mechanical license and needs to make a payment. Mechanical licenses we'll get into as well, like on the 2 sides where you have your copyright and the songwriter, you get performance royalties and mechanical royalties. On this side, you get the master recording royalties. There's also mechanical royalties. So it's a big part of how you get paid. Slice number 3, rights of derivatives. That means like if someone samples your song, like MC Hammer, Can't Touch This. He sampled the riff from Rick James. So he needs to pay Rick James, royalties on that. So, or another derivative would be, transferring a song into a different language. So rights of public display, lyrics, they need a license. However, if they put your lyrics out on the website, like DistroKid and iTunes, right nowadays they'll have your lyrics out there if you want to see them. That's a right of public display. They have to pay for that right. You got that right. The right of distribution. Okay, to commercially distribute the sound recordings that embodies the composition. Okay, right of distribution. That means they're distributing, the sound recording that embodies this composition, not competition, composition. And then last, number 6 is digital transmission. It takes a recording that embodies a composition and distributes it digitally, like the Pandora cable stations and satellite radio. And those are non-interactive stations, which we'll talk about later, because there's interactive and there's non-interactive, and you actually get paid differently based on which one they are. and touch briefly on digital performances, royalties, mechanical in the UK or the rest of Europe, because I'm talking about America, and some of these policies are a little bit different as you go overseas, but let's conquer America first before we conquer the world, okay? So, say you're a songwriter, which you are, and you want to collect your money from the UK and the rest of Europe when Spotify is playing it. You want to collect your digital performances royalties, aka mechanical royalties. You could hire a publisher administrator like Song Trust, and they would control the 6 rights of copyright. They do a deal with an MRA, a Music Rights Association, like SACEM out of France, which is like ASCAP for the USA. But, you won't make anything overseas unless you have a huge following, like I said before, unless you're David Hasselhoff and you're huge in Germany. The pipeline through the UK and the rest of the world through your mechanical royalties is very difficult. The download point is not so bad. I mean, you're obviously, when you download a song anywhere in the world, your distributor you're gonna make that 60 cents, whatever. That's the big money right there. It's the other royalties that get all lost in the mess, like your mechanical royalties, your performance royalties. So you have to weigh whether it's worth it or not to hire a separate publishing administrator to do all that for you. At this point, we don't have one. We're on our own. We're making our money from sales. We're just not making all the money that we should be getting because it goes through all these pipelines and it goes in circles back to itself. So here's a free service you need to sign up for. At this point, you put your stuff out in the world. It's called Sound Exchange. Okay? It has nothing to do with lyric and melody. It has everything to do with the sound recording. For any digital transmission of a sound recording, there is a rate that has to be paid to Sound Exchange. Sound Exchange will pay out money for public performance of a sound recording, whereas ASCAP pays out money on public performance of a composition. It pays when a sound recording is played in a digital way, not AM/FM, non-interactive, DMCA compliant, talk about that later, internet radio like old Pandora, when you had no control over what you wanted to play, etc. They remit payment to you. It pays the entity that controls the sound recording. And a good note for musicians is that it also pays the musicians that played on the sound recording. They can get paid too if they're in the metadata. So songwriters, when you record a song, when you go to Sound Exchange, give them that information as far as who the bass player was, who the drummers, like flute players, whoever it was. Because if they go to Sound Exchange, they'll be able to get paid on those digital performance royalties. These digital performance royalties are earned over what they call non-interactive digital transmissions, which we'll touch on, but there's non-interactive and there's interactive. Okay, quick note about Spotify. When Spotify uses a lyric and melody, they have to get 2 rights. There are 2 big ones: right of reproduction and the right of public performance. Public performance, reproduction. For them to get the right of recording, it calls up the record label, distributor, and it gets that right. Real easy, like your distributor. For it to get the rights of lyric and melody, it doesn't have to have a direct contact. It can follow the rules that the U.S. government created called the Compulsory license. Spotify will get a performance license from the PRO. For the performance rights, Spotify gets the rights of reproduction from the songwriter or the publisher administrator or a company called Audiam, which we're going to get to in a minute, and I highly recommend them. That's going to be another service that gets into what's going to make us our money. When the money comes from Spotify, it gets split 50-50 for those 2 sources, performance and reproduction, aka mechanical. So let's talk about Audiam for a second. Like we talked about the the publishing administrators, which you are at this point. Here's a little bit about Audiam. A North American reproduction collection agency. Rights of reproduction are different from public performance. Streaming mechanical royalties are every time a recording of your composition streams in the US, it generates a royalty owed to the songwriter publisher. Audiam licenses and collects that money from Apple Music, Spotify, etc. They work just like ASCAP, who's a music rights organization, but for the rights of reproduction for streaming mechanical royalties in the US and in Canada. Here's the thing though. If you have a pub admin deal with companies like Songtrust, CD Baby Pro, or TuneCore, you cannot work with Audiam because the pub admin deal has your rights. If you do a deal as a self-published songwriter with Audiam, all you have done is hire them to collect and license just one of the 6 rights, which is the reproduction. They do work with some pub admin companies such as Roundhill Music, Rough Trade, Mute Song, Clearbox, Blue Water Music, to name a few. Audiam didn't create their digital rights service to plug into an existing structure. They're challenging and changing existing structures for the better. This is why they've been hired to represent catalogs like Metallica, Jason Mraz, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and more. And by signing up with Audiam, you would maintain your publishing rights. They work on your behalf. This leaves you room to sign up with PROs like ASCAP or BMI in the US. So, very important. You're not giving your rights away. And they collect, they take a percentage, I think it's 20%, but they collect on your mechanical rights on your digital streams, like a pro admin would do. But it's just in the US and Canada. And, they have a really good tracking system. So you can go in there, you can see where your stuff's being played, where your money's coming from, and you're not signing your rights away to them. And it's a really good company ran by really good people. I've done a lot of research on them. The company, the founder, his name is Jeff Price, who was actually the founder of TuneCore ran it for like 6 years before they pushed him out. And he despises them now because they totally turned into a company that he didn't want them to turn into. So he started Audiam, and it's challenging the system right now. And I've recently signed up with them. We didn't really sign up. I started to work with them, and we'll see. Check back with me in a few days, a few weeks, a few months, see how it goes. Do your homework, do your own research. But, I held out. I didn't sign with a pub admin. And the good news with working with a company like this is they work for pub admins, like yourself, like who I am. And whereas the other, if you sign up with a pub admin, you can't work with a company like this. And Audiam also does really cool things with YouTube. So they're able to search your database and collect royalties that are owed to you on YouTube, unlike anyone else. So look into that as well. Now, there's another area that a lot of people talk about called the Harry Fox Agency, or HFA. They do mechanical licensing, much like Audiam, but you'll never see any money going through them because basically HFA created a way for anyone to show up and get a mechanical license. Spotify pays HFA a whole lot of money to go out and deal with licensing and make deals with PROs. In other words, Harry Fox Agency works for the DSPs, digital service providers like Spotify, and not for you, the PROs. Harry Fox Agency is a back office agency, a third-party company. These agencies collect and distribute mechanical royalties and are responsible for tracking and collecting when your song is reproduced. Okay. In the USA, Harry Fox Agency and there's Music Reports, they take on this responsibility. In Europe, etc., there's another company called ICE Services, just so you know. on a side note, and here's an important thing. You don't need to have your music on HFA or MRI. They don't work for you, the songwriter, self-published songwriter. They work for them, the DSPs, like Spotify and all those people. Like, you haven't granted them any rights, and they're lying to you if they say they need you to register in order to get paid. They're just an organization that is supposed to just pay you for your mechanical streaming rights. If you're not getting paid, it's probably because they're not paying you. So, do your homework on the Harry Fox Agency. I mean, they have their good things of what they do. We'll get into some more of that later, but as far as depending on them to pay your mechanical licenses, good luck. And let's talk a little bit about what a royalty is. A royalty is a percentage of profit entitled to a creator or owner for the use of their intellectual property. Licenses to royalties, collection societies issue licenses, electronically track the usage of music registered with them, and then pay out royalties. Now, we've talked a little about this before too. Performance royalties. Performance has a broad meaning in the world of music. In this context, it means the broadcast of a song. TV, not confused with sync, radio, live venues, restaurants, bars, elevator music, clothing stores, gyms, jukeboxes, internet radio, non-interactive, like old Pandora was, online interactive like Apple Music, Spotify, terrestrial radio, AM, FM stations. They're collected by collection societies like your PRO, performance rights organizations, and CMOs, which are collective management organizations internationally. These collection societies will typically collect both the writer's share and the publisher's share of the performance royalty and pay the songwriter and publisher respectively. They're paid out to you by your PROs such as ASCAP. Okay, we got that, performance royalty. Let's talk for a second about two things. I know we're moving around here, but we're trying to paint a picture. Yeah. Interactive digital streams as opposed to non-interactive digital streams. What an interactive digital stream is when it's what you're very familiar with, like Spotify, Apple Music. These are things that you could have control over. You could stop. You could always stop any of them. But you could rewind, fast forward, skip to any song you want, choose any song you want, choose any album. That's where you're paying for these services. You know, non-interactive is ones that you don't have that control over. Like, it is what it is. You know, like the old Pandora was, where you put in a song or an artist and it would play maybe a song by that artist. Then it would go to someone who's similar to that artist. You really had no control. Or like, you know, Sirius XM, like a streaming digital radio, or like AM FM radio, where you don't have any control over a song. It is what it is. Now, master recording royalties. It's collected by your distributor and or your label, like DistroKid in my case, and the money goes directly to the artist. Yay, good thing. Okay. So, we have mechanical royalties. Now, mechanical royalties, they're generated by mechanical reproduction of a song, such as physical copies on vinyl albums or CDs, or in digital downloads like MP3s or streams mostly. Online interactive streams, Spotify, ringtones, recorded cover songs, film soundtracks. The CRB, Copyright Royalty Board, determine the set rates for LPs, CDs, digital downloads. Well, they determine the set rate of a mechanical royalty. It's basically 9.1 cents is the digital rate for downloads or for albums or anything sold. For a song 5 minutes or less, anything after 5 minutes, it's 1.75 cents. This money is owed straight to the published administrator or you, if you don't have one. Now, interactive streaming services such as Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, Tidal, all need to pay these mechanical royalties. The CRB, I said that before, it was the Copyright Royalty Board, set an all-in royalty of 10.5% of the music services revenue based on previous month. And we're talking about performance royalties on streams. It's a very, very complicated system that you've all heard about and complained about forever, which is when Spotify streams your song, you're not making any money from it. You're actually making like 1,000th of a cent, 0.004 cents for every stream. And, it's a real crummy system, but it is there, and it is your money, and you're not getting it, basically. What's worse is that you're not getting it. It's bad enough that it's very little. It's even worse that you don't get it. Because, you get enough of them, enough streams, it does add up to something, and you should get it. But if you're not established with all this proper pipeline, you're really losing out on all of that. So get what's owed to you. So that is that. Now, one thing I want to just talk about briefly here, one of the last things we'll talk about is this MMA, not mixed martial arts. It's the Music Modernization Act. It's very important. It comes into play with a lot of things very soon. It was established in October of 2018, considered the most significant reform to U.S. copyright impacting songwriters in over a century. I'm just going to read this off here because I just think it's really important. The MMA was started based on companies like Spotify not getting licenses to use your music. They had billions of dollars invested in them. They quickly got public and ran to the stock market. Spotify got caught and they got sued. Basically because they were not getting licenses to use your music, and they had billions of dollars invested in them. So they quickly got public and they ran to the stock market. Spotify got caught and they got sued. So Audiam, company I was just talking about, untangled the mess and figured out what was happening and all that. And at the same time that was going on, Warner Music, Universal, and Sony all owned equity positions in Spotify and literally owned stock in Spotify, and were trying to get the company public. They eventually went public, made millions of dollars, and which they were able to keep without paying any royalties on. And the problem was that there was companies other than Warner, Universal, and Sony that were having their rights infringed upon. So people that owned stock in Spotify worked really hard from keeping them to get sued. So after the dust settled, the NMPA, National Music Publishing Association, worked with these organizations and created the MMA, Music Modernization Act, which is a new law, a new bill that has become law. Part of this new law states that Spotify will instantly have a license to every song, the lyric and melody, on the planet, starting January 9th, 2021. That includes songs from the past, the present, the future. It's called a blanket license, and they no longer can get accused of infringement for not having a license. So basically, what this law does is that Spotify no longer has to reach out and get a license from you. If the song is out in the world, they have a license. They could use it. They could do whatever they want with it. Go figure, right? So they can't get sued anymore for not having to get licenses. Which I talked about earlier in the copyright, is that you have to be registered with the Library of Congress. I'll get into that in a second. I'm sorry if I'm rambling on it, but I hope that you understand what I'm saying. And this part is very important. It's crucial for us songwriters going forward to actually make money in this business, in this aspect of the business. Out of the MMA, they came up with a service called the MLC. It's called the Mechanical Licensing Collective. Now, it's crucial to sign up with them and give them your information as soon as they're established. I mean, they're not even established yet, but it is going to happen. So now Spotify will now give all the money for the mechanical royalties to the MLC. Now the MLC is responsible for paying all of you, all of us. If the MLC can't figure out who to pay because they can't find you, or if you don't register with them, they get to keep your money. They wrote it into law that after a period of time, they get to pay it to the board of directors of the MLC. That board consists of Warner, Universal, Sony, were the very same people that helped get the law passed. Another thing about the MLC is that it's only allowed under the law to collect mechanical royalties for the streaming and nothing else. On the mandates of the MMA, it will collect digital mechanical royalties, yet its mandate will only cover a limited scope of the rights, specifically streaming services. In the first quarter of 2021, you will no longer need to register your copyrights with the U.S. Copyright Office to be eligible to be paid to earn mechanical royalties on streams. Instead, you will proactively go to the MLC website, which at this point doesn't exist, and register with that. If you register with that, you are eligible to get paid. Of course, you'll need to know this, and we hope that they will communicate this with you, us. It appears that no one kept track of this anyway with streaming services like Apple Music and Spotify. If you write a song, whether you recorded it or not, and that song goes live in the US and streams on interactive devices, the rules of the US will apply. The recording of your song will generate those songwriter royalties called mechanical royalties, and those royalties get paid to you. Starting January 2021, you will have to register with the MLC to get that money. So let's all register. Prior to 2021, which is now, they're supposed to be paying you directly no matter where you are in the world. Okay, so Music Modernization Act. Is it a good thing? It's just another layer to get your money. That's how you see it. It started off very simple. You're the songwriter, the publisher, publishing administration, and how the money is funneled to you. Now there's all these other organizations that just get in the way, of you collecting your money. This is another one. And it's another way of the money just circling back and forth, instead of just going direct to you. There's one thing you should know about it. It's called a compulsory license. Compulsory means they compel you to have a license after you've made a sound recording. You can't say no. Anyone can cover, use your song. U.S. government says you have no choice but to let people use your work. Once your music is in the world, you have lost the right to say no. If your composition is not released, there's no compulsory license, and you can negotiate anything you want. If you're not getting payments and they have this license, they're breaching the license. To get a license, they need an NOI, Notice of Intent. That is, they send you a letter saying, I intend to use your sound recording and manufacture it and commercially release it. If you receive that NOI, they have a license. It's that simple. That's why when you'll see when you put your music in the world through a distributor, you'll get an email for each DSP that you are now streaming on Spotify, you are now streaming on Apple Music, you are now streaming on YouTube, whatever. That is basically your NOI, your Notice of Intent, because if you don't get that notice, they're infringing on your licenses. So, you should know that. Besides that, there's a direct license instead of a compulsory license. You can negotiate mechanical royalties with some instances. Let's talk a little bit about publishing, how you are your own publisher. You own the publishing. Okay? A publisher is responsible for maximizing the commercial potential of those compositions through license in film, television programs, advertisements, or other opportunities. Why work with a publisher? Traditionally, publishers can find outlets, your music, that you may be unaware of. They help you find sync deals that might otherwise be difficult to obtain. But these days, there are more options than your traditional publisher. Publishing deals, there's like publishing deals or agreements. Essentially an agreement with a publishing company to provide administrative and sometimes creative support your catalog so that you can focus on doing what you do best, songwriting. An administration agreement, the songwriter keeps 100% ownership of their copyright and pays somewhere between 10 to 15% of royalties, depending on the term, typically 1 to 3 years. Co-publishing agreement. also known as a traditional publishing deal, you typically assign 50% ownership of the publisher share to your co-publisher. This leaves you with 100% writer share, 50% of your publisher share, although negotiable. All negotiable. And there are benefits to this traditional publishing deal. They'll pitch your songs to music supervisors, submit to labels, etc. There's work for hire, where you get a flat fee and you forfeit ownership and administration rights for the life of the copyright. It could be beneficial, do stuff like that. You'll get paid immediately. You can meet and work with established creators. There's exclusive songwriter agreements where a songwriter generally assigns her entire publishing share of any songs written during the agreement to the publishing company. The benefit is that the songwriter can get an advance weekly, monthly, but the money still has to be recouped. And lastly, using other songwriters' works. Using pre-existing copyrighted work is a possible starting point for artists. Covering or sampling a song. If you want to release a cover song, you need to obtain a compulsory mechanical license. You'll most likely do this through their publisher or a third party such as Harry Fox Agency or Easy Song Agency. You can also search for the publisher in the database of the collection societies. So I went through a lot of stuff. Hopefully that was helpful to you. I know this is an hour-long video, but I just wanted to touch upon some things that will help you collect all the money that's due to you and help you hopefully understand when I was talking about how the song is split. And with everything I listed below, I'm going to try to put a link to their websites in the description down below so you can easily go to them and do the homework for yourself. I figured this will help you. It's a good starting point because I'm covering all the angles, relatively speaking, to this. I'm not an expert on this by no means. If I'm wrong on any aspects, I apologize. That's why I say do your own homework. I've done mine. And if I am wrong about things, please clarify. Tell me why, what you see that I said wrong, or maybe some other options that are more beneficial. So once again, if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and much success to you. And again, please stay healthy during this time. If you're a musician or a creative person, take this time to do some great things. Write, clean your apartment, whatever you want to do. All right? So please leave comments. Let me know how you like it. How you like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you'll know when I make more videos, which I intend to do. So be safe out there and rock on. And I'll see you next time. Ciao.